And that's the thing. Like, scripts aren't meant to be read, scripts are meant to be produced. The script is not the movie is the movie. Production is such an important element, obviously. And in post-production, that's where it's all coming together. Hello and welcome to Off the Lot. The film industry is changing fast, and if you want to make movies, it's time to become your own gatekeeper. If you've got a vision and the drive to make it happen, this podcast is for you.
We're your hosts, Ken Kabatov and Anthony Yap, and every week we dive into the hustle, challenges, and strategies of independent filmmaking. We talk to directors, producers, and industry pros about what it really takes to get your film made on your own terms.
Let's dive in. We're back. Anthony, it's good to see you. It's been a while.
It's been a while. I've been talking to myself for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, great job holding down the fort. I have to say, those episodes are great, and people seem to be responding well to them, and there's just a ton of great information there. I didn't know you had it in you.
I didn't either, but podcasts are kind of fun because sometimes if you do a solo one, you get a chance to riff on a topic that you're sort of deep into and bring your perspective to it. But I also think it's great to mix it, and I've missed talking with you about all things Remnant and all things in the indie film world. So I was very excited to have you back on this week.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, it's good to be back, and I'd like to stick around as much as my schedule right now permits. I'm just, like we talked about, I'm so deep into Remnant, well, in terms of post-production. And part of that is that I'm also editing the movie alongside our two editors. And so right now, I'm working 14 hours a day just handling the post-production side of things because we have such a rush schedule, which we can get into. But it's all going very well. It's just, I barely have time for lunch right now. So I was like, can you record a podcast episode this week? I was like, I don't actually think I physically can. I don't think it's possible.
That's so amazing because, you think to yourself, well, production, I get, right? Like, I mean, production is so hard to carve out an hour. It's like, there's no way you can just carve out an hour when 16 hours of your day are going to be taken up with the making of the movie itself and getting home and then, just trying to have one moment of decompression before you have to do it all again. And I'm really interested to hear kind of like what's consuming your time in post-production. Why don't we go like in the Wayback Machine here a little bit, because I realized we did not actually get you on right at wrap. So it'd be interesting. Just let's touch on the last week of production for you, what your impressions were of that last week. And I know you had a wrap party as well. So why don't we just get into that a little bit and then we'll get into post-production.
Did we not talk about my last week of production? I thought we did. I thought you talked right after I wrapped, no?
Yeah, I don't think we did.
Well, either way, I can quickly recap.
Okay.
I mean, the last week was a shorter week, and we had our sea legs a little bit at that point, but it also helped that the last 2 days of production we were at Canopy Studios, and so it was a massive facility. I've talked about it before, and we were able to just spread out, and it was a lot more comfortable and get a lot of things done. But actually, now that I've had a little bit of distance from this final week of production, which again, everything went really well, and it was very emotional when we wrapped, and everybody's hugging and cheering, and it ended very, very, very well. And people, I think, had a great time. As chaotic as it was, I think in the end, people did have a good time. Looking back at it, though, here's one of my biggest regrets of production. I budgeted 15 days of BCAM for an 18-day shoot. I needed to find a way, next time, I need to find a way to have BCAM for my entire shoot. Even though we had those 3 days that we didn't have BCAM and we're like, yeah, those are lighter days, we can make that work. Holy cow. Now that I'm in post, what a difference it is having that extra camera angle for almost every scene, except for those 3 days of production. And one of those days, it's, you think, oh, it's a simple dialogue scene. She's in a hospital bed laying down, like, really, what can we do here coverage wise to make it interesting? But, you need it. You absolutely just need that extra angle, that piece of coverage that can help you tie that scene together. And so that's one big lesson I've learned, is actually like having two cameras. It's a requirement now for me.
One of the interesting tidbits there is that you mentioned is it's also just, the system that you were using to make the film for the first 15 days is not this, like the style, the system, the method, the flow, the pacing once you drop those 3 days of camera, because the coverage that you've been getting the entire time, you're not getting on those last 3 days. And it almost affects how you're editing the film because you don't have as many options, like you were saying, and you don't have the kind of.
Yeah, and for the record, we scheduled our B camera days, so it wasn't just the final 3 days. We figured out like, oh, okay, day 4 is a lighter day. We don't need B cam that day. I think it was actually the first day at the house, so that would have been day 3 was one camera, and then there were 2 days near the end, not consecutive. But it actually got to a point where we were looking at the schedule, and Pete White, our brilliant first AD, was like, I think we need to flip the B cam days. Like tomorrow is a tough day. We need B cam for that day. And maybe the last day we can live without them. And even still, like he was totally right. We did need B cam for that day. So flipping their schedule was perfect. But that final day, even without them, I look at these scenes and the scenes are great. But there's just this like limiting quality to them where I'm like, okay, I have the shots that I want, but I want more. Damn it. I want to just have that option and just be able to have a little bit more flexibility in the edit. And so it all worked out, but that was definitely something like moving forward that I want to do. One other thing I'd like to do, and you could speak to this as an AD is, well, look, this is like a pie in the sky. Like, hey, if I have way more money, what options do I have? But right now we had an 18-day shoot and we were doing 12-hour camera days for 18 days. And, no money for overtime, really. Even though camera team and certain departments would go into overtime, it was sort of death by a thousand cuts that way. But really what I would do is try to schedule a 28-day film, 25 to 28 days, 10-hour camera days, but budget 12 hours of wages, right? So that every day you can go into overtime, you can go into meal penalty, and it's not going to kill you. And if you just stick to a 10-hour camera day, then you're making savings. You have savings by the end of it, so you can spend a little bit more. Bring in a C cam if you need. Hey, pickup shoot. If you haven't already budgeted a pickup shoot, cool. There's a little bit of money left over to do something like that. So that's one thing that I would consider. I think for Remnant 2 or whatever movie I do next is just okay. Do we have enough budget to be able to do that? Look, 18 days. I'm lucky to even get 18. I think this movie started out at 20. We had to cut costs, so it went down to 19, and then I was like, I think I could squeeze this down to 18. And it's this funny thing that I know you run into all the time of like, well, it's easy to just put all the strips in a one-liner in 18 days. Like anybody, a monkey can do that, but it still doesn't mean that it's an 18-day movie, right? It's still, the scenes are still the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you have a game plan, but if you have that concept of like, if I think of like players on the field, so to speak, in terms of the way you translate that to a movie budget, is like players on the field is when you have a low budget film, your players on the field, and I'm not talking about your crew, but you got to think about it as like our resources are, we have a high school football team.
Yeah.
And we're playing an NFL football team. So the movie needs an NFL team to compete properly, but you have a high school football team. And I'm not talking about the quality of the crew. I'm just talking about this. The high school football team is the budget of the movie.
Yeah.
And so you need more. You might get lucky. You might, you're going to push, and obviously everybody's going to try hard, but you just don't have the resources you need in order to do what you need to do to get to that next level. Because this would, you could easily throw $40 million at this film and it would still be the same movie.
It would be.
It would have $40 million more polish to it, like just like that little bit of extra zhuzh. You'd have those 3 extra hours of overtime to catch what you need. You wouldn't compromise on anything necessarily, or you'd compromise on.
Yeah. But also like the fact is we ended up making a $5 million film for roughly 1.5 million US.
Yeah.
And if I make the second film for $5 million, it'll be a little bit bigger than what we have right now, but it's generally going to be the same, like the same scale of movie. It's just that we got so many favors this time around, right? Like certain vendors were giving us a 90% discount because of our relationships, but we only get to do that once. And so thank you. We've already thanked everybody a lot privately, but this movie would not exist without the support of the local industry and huge department heads coming in, taking a 50% pay cut, just to work with us. But we know that that's not going to happen again.
Right.
So we've even told our investors and everybody else that's interested in continuing to work with us, like, okay, but movie number 2 is like, that's the real budget. That's going to be the actual thing.
That's what the movie should have been to get the same quality level, right? Like that's exactly it. Every series goes through that. Like, I mean, John Wick had that problem. They made a movie nobody thought would have anything to it because the budget wasn't there for it with the first one. But because it was so successful, they got the money for the second one. But then they had to start paying everybody what they were actually worth, like what they actually were worth paying. Like Keanu Reeves wasn't getting a big rate for that film,
No.
but on the sequel, he sure did.
On the sequel, and like John Wick 4, I think had a budget of around $140 million. But the actual below the line budget was around 70 to 80.
Yeah.
And so there's like $60 million in just Keanu Reeves and other above the line talent, right? And
yeah.
Yeah.
And you hope that that's the case too, because that's the reward for making a good movie in the first place is that, I mean, if there's a self-interest in all of it, is like you make a really good first film. And when there's a sequel, the people who contributed to that first film, they can get more money to work on it. You know, it's like, that's what you're hoping for, I think.
Yeah. I think that understanding is there with everybody involved, both, you know, on behind the scenes and the making of, is that people, I'm not saying that this is true about Remnant. I mean, it is, but it's true for so many other films of like people see potential in the filmmakers or the script or the, you know, the other talent involved. And they say, oh, you know what? I want to hitch my wagon to that horse, knowing that, you know, this film isn't going to get you to the destination, but movie number 2 or movie number 3 could guarantee you employment and a better paycheck down the road. And so people are investing their time into this thing, hoping for success.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to deliver that success, but we're working on it.
Yeah, that's the indie film spirit, is that we, as you know, that's what we're looking for in crew and cast and in stories is, you know, you're betting on not just directors, but you're betting on teams. And we're doing that constantly. You know, you're maybe working on 2 films for below scale because you want to, you're like, well, let's see how this team works out. And let's see if that works out, then that could lead to something bigger. If this works out, that could lead to something bigger. And it's like, that's what we do in indie film is we look for blue chip prospects, I think is the term that we're thinking of. But okay, so production aside, let's dig into it. Now you've had so you guys wrapped, well, you wrapped end of February.
Yeah, we wrapped 6 weeks ago.
Yeah. And so now we're into post. And so you've had 6 weeks of post. Let's walk through it.
Okay.
Take me from the beginning.
So we wrapped. I'll never forget the day after wrap. You go from 100 miles an hour for 6, you know, well, let's just say 3 months of insanity, especially like 2 months of like official prep and production. And February 27th, Friday, February 27th, I woke up that morning after wrap. And or was it Saturday? I don't know. Okay, I guess I could forget the day after wrap. I've just forgotten. But the point is, I woke up and I didn't have anybody around me. I was alone at home. My girlfriend had gone to work, and all of a sudden you go from being surrounded by dozens of people, telling everybody what to do, and directing actors, and being creative, and doing all of these things, and then there was nothing, and it was just this like post production depression that set in. And I even warned everybody around me. I'm like, this is going to happen. It happens when I finish a script. It happens when I finish any major project. I think so many other creative people can relate to this, is that you've given it your all and then it's just over. And you're like, what do I do now? And so I was at home kind of bored, wondering, well, I guess I'll go to the gym. I'll figure out my meal plan again. I can start to eat well again. You know, at a certain point, when you're on set, I was like, I was eating well for the first 2 weeks. And then you don't get enough sleep. It's stressful. You start digging into the cookies and the chocolate just to get by. But I'm back home, and I decided to watch the very, very rough assembly that our editor put together for Telefilm, because we applied for post-production funding, which we haven't heard about yet. I don't think anybody has. But this rough assembly was put together like just really close to the end of production. So it didn't even have those last couple scenes. And even my editor was like, don't watch this. Whatever you do, just do not watch this. You won't like it. This is not the movie. And he was right. I shouldn't have watched it, but I did. And I felt like jumping off of a bridge. it was basically synced picture and sound, and like the scenes were there, but they weren't scenes. This was not the movie. And so all of a sudden, you wrap production, and I watched this thing, and I was like, what have I done?
Yeah.
This movie this movie sucks. But then, look, I knew that wasn't it. And so we wrapped February 26th. The deadline for the rough cut was March 11th. So for that time, the 2 weeks, I just got healthy again. Like I said, I just started, filling the well, as I call it. I started reading more, watching movies, catching up on things that I just couldn't do over the last couple of months, and just started getting back into a creative mode. Because on top of that, you have to start thinking about what's next as well.
Yeah.
And what am I going to work on? What am I going to start writing? And so March 11th came around. We got the rough cut, and that rough cut went to my writing and producing partner, Christopher Nash, and myself, nobody else. And so we have two editors on board, Andrew Gust and Sam Dewar, who are brilliant. These guys are killing it. And so only the four of us had seen the movie at that point. And the rough cut, I got to say, I know you're supposed to hate your rough cut, and it was definitely rough and problematic in areas, but you could see the movie in it. It was this moment of like, wait a second, I think we have something. This isn't so bad. I could see the finished statue in this block of marble. And so, we started to get into it and compile some notes. And I think it was that Saturday, March 14th, where I rented a theater downtown, thanks to the Vancouver Film School for helping us out. And the four of us saw the rough cut on a big screen. And then we talked about all of the changes that we wanted to make. And so that rough cut was coming in at 1 hour and 55 minutes. Our goal for this movie is between 95 and 99 minutes. In the end, I don't think for a movie like this, it's appropriate to ask for more than 100 minutes of the audience's time. It's just not that type of movie. In fact, most movies just shouldn't be that long.
Yeah.
I think just movies are too long right now. Like it's unnecessary. Man, 100 minutes is the sweet spot. Between 90 and 100. If you could do that, that's great. So it was running a little long for us, but not like, it wasn't the first cut of Zodiac. It wasn't 7 hours. We were at 155 minutes. We were less than 2 hours. It's like, okay, this is good. And as our editor put it, this movie, this rough cut, contained every look and every line. Okay, so he didn't cut anything out. We had a really good discussion: what was working, what's not working. Maybe the way I shot a scene or conceived of a scene wasn't really coming through in the rough cut. That wasn't maybe very clear as far as my direction or conversations with them as they were going through that. So these little things popped up, and it's all normal. But then I started to realize, like, well, we have to lock picture at the end of April, and then we have to start sound and VFX and color and music composition immediately, because we have to deliver this movie very, very quickly. And so, looking at the post schedule as far as picture lock and working backwards to a producer's cut, I was talking to our editors, and I'm like, I don't know, like, how much time am I going to have to actually work with you on a director's cut? And and what I mean by that is sitting with them via Zoom, because one's in LA, one's here in Burnaby, but we would do this virtually, watching the cut and just going through scene by scene, beat by beat, cut by cut. Is this working? No, stop there. That has to be arranged. Let's redo that. And it just wasn't really feasible to do that based on the situation with their schedules and the timeline of this movie. So I was like, all right, well, look, I have an editing background. What are you guys cutting on? They're like, Avid. And I was like, shit. Because I know Premiere Pro and I know DaVinci Resolve. Avid it's the Ferrari of editing software. But I just mean that in a complicated way. I don't know. I've never driven a Ferrari, but I imagine it's very touchy. And so I had to relearn Avid. And they love this idea, because, like, I'm the director now coming in to help co-edit the movie with them. And so what really worked out about this was I learned Avid a little bit in film school when you and I were there. That's what they teach you. And Avid still is the industry standard editing software. And at first, like, it's really complicated. It's so weird, but you kind of have to just wrap your mind around how the software works versus how DaVinci works or Premiere works. It's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But once you figure that out, and that took about a day or two, it's great. And I understand now why Avid is the number one editing software. The way that project management works and how you can work with teams. It's sometimes maybe not as simple as you want it to be, but there are some things that are so streamlined in it. And you're like, why don't the other softwares do that?
Yeah.
So all of that to say, I jumped in and I started cutting the movie with them. And that was great because, say, Andrew could work on reel one, Sam could work on reel two, and I could jump into reel three. And so this movie, like 3 different reels of this film, are being cut together at the same time. And we were able to really streamline the process.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like with Avid, it's like I mean, not to get into techie stuff, but it's your editors work on this system all the time. For them, it's almost like handwriting or typing. It's like it's very intuitive of what they're up to.
Yeah.
And when you have to get your brain around the tools, sometimes also that simplifies your thinking a little bit too. You're more deliberate about the cutting that you're doing because you know that for you to make changes, you almost have to. You have to kind of think through it, because if you go off on a certain way, you're going to have to then get wrapped into the tool itself to bring it back into where you need it to be, right?
Well, that's what happened to me yesterday. And so now, because, look, my editors are so good. This movie has been, how do I say this? They've layered in so much already for a director's cut as far as sound design and score, that we have, 25 to 30 tracks already in the cut. And so it's one of those things of like, okay, I want to make a cut. I want to make an edit. I want to make a revision to this scene. I do have to really think about it, because to do it, I have to move all of these pieces and shift them over. And if I make a mistake, everything's out of sync, and then it's a disaster. And so you have to be very deliberate about what you actually want to do at this level. I mean, if you're just starting out and you have 2 tracks, just audio and video, like, go for it. You can't really make a mistake.
Yeah.
But right now they've assembled this, I don't want to call it a Jenga tower, but it's a very precarious timeline where I'm like, I don't want to screw anything up for them, because we're swapping bins back and forth. We're swapping timelines back and forth.
Yeah.
I'll make an edit. I'll throw it back into Dropbox. Hey, Sam, reel one is done. You can now go and start your titles on that, or, whatever. And then we're just constantly sharing and reversioning up our timelines. And so it's this very cool, fluid process. And it's been great. But yeah, they're versed in this. This is their job, their full-time job for 20 years. And for me, I'm like, I know the principles of what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so I'm the guy that's like, I'm a bit of a bull in a china shop with it, because I'll come in, I'll make my edits, and I think it's pretty good. And they're like, yeah, you mess this track up or whatever. And like, I'm getting better. But
No, I was going to say, like, it speaks to the editing as a craft. You write the film, then you shoot the film, and then you edit the film. And all 3 are creative processes along the way. And you've spent all this time on writing the script, probably years writing the script, right? Like crafting this into this like wonderful work of writing that speaks for itself in a way. Like it's got its own rhythm, it's its own thing. And then you go to shoot it. And of course, shooting a film is so mechanical in its process, right? It's never the same as what it was in the writing process, when you have a blue sky and you can just imagine all the possibilities, and then you get on the day and the fire isn't as high as you need it to be, but you have to make the fire work, or whatever concept is coming into, whatever logistics are coming into play. The location is never quite what you wanted, although it's pretty close. But you make it pretty close. And then you get into the edit, and the edit is like taking all of that raw material and turning it into something where, and I always liken it to like when I watch people who paint, and it's like, you see them shape things in, and you're like, oh, that's really good. What they've done is really good. And then you think to yourself, like, I wouldn't change it at that moment. And then suddenly they spend another 3 hours on these like little tuning fork moments on a painting, and you go, oh wow, that's even better. And you think, well, that's clearly done. And then you come back a day later and they've spent 12 hours working on an eye on a portrait or something like that, and you're like, wow, that's really popping now all of a sudden. And the painting is just getting better and better and better, but it's all these little micro moments that you're
Yeah.
like micro shifts that you're making. Like you could have stopped right there and the film would have been good, but not but then 12 hours later with a little bit of tuning to a scene, suddenly it's gone from 70% to 71% and it's like 72%. Which is always fascinating me about editing.
Yeah, that's where we're at right now. And I'm really happy with how the first director's cut went. So, I mean, just to step back as far as like timeline and process, again, I have a co-visionary creative head on this with, this is a Kabatoff Nash film. It's not a Ken Kabatoff film. It's not a Christopher Nash film. It's Kabatoff Nash. But one thing that we struggle with, and every filmmaker struggles with, is fresh eyes. I actually just listened to a podcast with Steven Soderbergh on Team Deacons, and he was talking about this. He's like, the hardest part about this entire process as a director and being so involved is having fresh eyes on the material. And once you lose them, you don't get them back. And so I want to find out what Soderbergh's process is, because I've now watched this movie so many times that like I don't know if it's scary anymore. I don't know if it's funny. I don't All I know is if a scene is working in the sense that it flows and technically the sound and expressions and score and like everything's like lining up the way I want it to be, but like I don't really know until I watch it in a new setting or with a different audience, et cetera, et cetera. So one thing that we had to do was protect Chris as far as having fresh eyes. So again, I am the director of the movie, and respectfully, like I directed it and Chris wrote it and produced it. But we wanted to make sure that he saw it before the other producers saw it. And again, just to maintain fresh eyes and keep getting new opinions on this thing. And so when I dived into the director's cut with our co-editors, I had 2 weeks to turn around a director's cut for Chris. We had 3 weeks total for a director's cut in the schedule. So we spent 2 weeks getting it ready for Chris. Chris then watched it, gave us his notes, and that was super beneficial. And then we had one more week working with Chris and the two editors to turn this around into like the official director's cut. And so then we booked a theater downtown again. Thank you, VFS, once more, and brought in the producers and a couple extra department heads, like our visual effects supervisor. We brought in our composer and producers, associate producers. I'm not sure if anybody else was there. There were about like 10 of us at this screening. And so then we watched it and again got like really great feedback from them. But the movie played very, very, very well. I was really happy about that. So people seem to be excited. But again, you see it on a big screen. It just plays a little bit differently than watching it on your computer monitor as you edit. So taking into account all of these notes, that's where we're at. That was last Saturday. And so we've made some great changes, and we're also now starting to send the film out to just other people for their opinions, private links, and in hopes of getting a picture lock soon. We're also going to be doing a test screening, a big audience test screening this month at the Park Theater, where we're going to open it up to people and just get fresh opinions from not only people in the industry, but hopefully a lot of people outside of the industry that don't know how the movie making process works. But this is a great opportunity to just get opinions that are totally fresh.
So by then you will have had, sort of three, what we'll call like three theatrical test screenings. Obviously, the first couple were more internal. If you have to lock picture, if it's April 20, it's like end of this month that you're doing the test screening, right?
Yeah, end of April, beginning of May.
Yeah. So if you're doing that, how much turnaround time would you have to like take any notes from that screening? And I guess that's the other thing is like, it's always funny with test screenings because you don't know the audience you're going to be having. So, some people who don't respond to it might not necessarily they might have good criticism, but their criticism might be, they're not horror fans. It's not their genre. So they all have different kind of feedback. How are you planning to use that in sort of getting to this locked picture status?
We have a questionnaire of 14 to 19 questions that are specifically targeted to the movie. And so it's multiple choice with the option to elaborate. And so I think from that, we'll get a pretty good sense. And again, if you're not a fan of horror movies, you're probably not going to like the movie. But even a couple people who generally aren't horror fans have said that this plays very, very well for them. Because it's not like hardcore, you know, like even Saw is a bit of an extreme compared to what our film is. Ours is much more of a Blumhouse like commercial studio horror film. And I mean, Saw I guess was technically in the end studio, but it's not like you know, we're not super gory. We're scary, but there is just some like awesome dramatic scenes, and there are some laughs too. It sort of has everything, and that's what I set out to do. I didn't want to make Hostile. I didn't want to just like make people squirm for 90 minutes or just have total blood and guts and killing nonstop. There's an actual story here, and there's great drama and great characters, and and some of it's touching, and so it sort of has everything.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then the question is like from that feedback, how much time are you going to have to turn around that locked cut?
Oh, about 2 weeks.
Ah,
And that's fine.
easy.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of it's working really well. I mean, at this point, I don't foresee any major load bearing walls shifting in the movie. I think like we've gotten the movie now down to 93 minutes,
Okay.
and not counting credits, and it's running really really well. Like I'm happy with it, and yeah, we've gotten some great feedback outside of our circle, and people seem to be happy. So that's all we can do is like also just like trust our gut to like this is the right way. If we like this, other people are sure to like this. Not everybody, but there's a pretty good percentage.
Is there some advantage, I guess, to having some very tight timelines because it kind of forces you to make those final decisions and to, in a way, you can't linger on trying to make something perfect. You almost have to kind of keep the ball moving forward because you've got to get this thing delivered. And so it's got to be in the best shape it can be. It has to be the film you want it to be by a certain date. So you have to kind of force yourself to make that film. Is there anything that's helping that process along that would be different than, let's say, you just had an indefinite timeline to get your final cut done?
Yeah, indefinite wouldn't be great. I think I work well with a deadline. I think most people actually do, whether they like it or not. Look, I wish I had 10 weeks for a director's cut. Everybody, like that's the studio standard, right? And so I had 3 weeks for a director's cut. And the difference there is that with more time, we could do more temp VFX to help tell the story a little bit better. Not only in the test screening, but also in terms of letting our VFX departments know, or our composer know, our sound designer know exactly what we want to do with some of those effect sequences. So right now, there are some scenes that are bare of temp VFX, but early on in the process, I also jumped into After Effects and did some a bunch of different split screening or wire removal, or even just like 2D particle stuff to just kind of show, oh, there's like a spirit or something here, a ghost here. And so I have that background as well. I can do minor VFX relatively well. And so with just more time, you can just build out more of the movie. And the other thing about temp sound effects is that they're necessary not only for the screening, but they also are a roadmap for your sound designer. Once you do the turnover and your sound designer takes over, they look at all of the temp sounds that you have in there and say, okay, well, we're not using these sounds, but the placement of these sounds is really important, and that's going to tell us what you actually want to be in this movie. And that just really helps them figure out how to design this movie. And of course, they're going to watch the full cut and feel the whole experience. But it's just with more time, yeah, more time is better. Deadlines are good. I just wish we had a little bit more time overall. That would be nice. But then it's also kind of exciting of like within a few months from now, the movie's going to be done,
Yeah.
like done, done, done. And I know some filmmakers in town who have spent like 2.5 years and they still haven't finished their movie. So I don't know. I like our scenario.
We were guilty of that with our first film. The post-production process was it was just too long. You got to a point where,
But why did it take so long?
first of all, we had to there were a lot of visual effects that needed to be fixed. And that was basically the thing. And the problem is we had $0 to do it. There's a lucky and a non-lucky part to this, is that during that period of time, we were in COVID, and it was like we had no money to finish it properly. So Helena and I had to learn the visual effects ourselves. So we had to just do, and at that time, the technology has evolved to the point now where we always laugh because 75% of the things we had to do back then are like button done.
Yeah.
And like literally like it's that simple now. Like the way the software has evolved in the last 3 years alone has had I it's just one of the, I'm like, the movie could have been done 75% faster had this existed 3 years ago, because it required so much fine tuning and tinkering and so many mistakes happening along the way.
Yeah.
So we kept going back. And of course, our computers just weren't powerful enough to make changes on the fly in visual effects, because the buffering and all the time it took, the processing speed wasn't fast enough. So if I made one change or Helena made one change, it could take 2 hours for you to know whether it worked or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you have to watch it in context of a scene, and you might get the cut right or the clip right, but then you'd put it back in the timeline, and then you'd have to watch it in the context of the scene, and then go like, okay, now is it working? And then you're like, well, no, there's like, look, it glitched, and you're like, okay, we have to go back, and then we have to go and fix it again. So just that was what took so long, and it was very frustrating because there were also then we had to work in the meantime to earn a living and all these other things.
Yeah.
And so, you would work on it for a month, and then we'd have to put it away for 3 months because we'd be working on a project, and then we'd come back to it and let's tinker this for another month. So that's the process. But yeah, like you get to a point where you're just like, I'm just tired of it. I just need it to be done. And that's not a good place to be with your film, because you now have to get excited about it existing.
Well, and that's the dilemma, right? So if you have money, you can do it quicker, but if you don't have money, then it's on you and it's just going to take a lot longer. Money does solve that problem. Yes.
I mean, you can do everything yourself. Like you said, you've got After Effects training. You could do all of this yourself. It would grind your creative vision for it to a halt
Yes.
while you were doing that. And why not have, I mean, you have access to, the editors you have. That's fantastic. Like that's a luxury and a gift to have that kind of thing where you have an editor who can just take what you're talking about and just actualize it for you in almost real time, so you can see what thoughts you have, and then you can go in and fine tune to help that process out. And I think once you get into lock picture and sound design and visual effects and so on, that's going to make the biggest difference. Yeah.
Well, there are also like it just goes back to like hire like the experts, right? And make sure that everybody around you is smarter than you as far as their field. And so our editors are amazing editors. Now, as far as like the story of the movie, that's really where I come in. And I really like this process because it basically reminds me of what it's like to work on a TV show, as far as like working with a showrunner, where a writer will write the script and then they'll deliver the draft, and then the showrunner does a pass. And then that goes out to the actors. And that's sort of how we've been editing, where the editors will build the scenes, get them into really good shape, and then I'll jump in and I'll be like, oh, no, this cut. And I have the ability to just change things around how I want them. I send it back to them. They're like, oh, yeah, that's pretty good. Or no, what about this? And then they'll do their tweak, and we'll just keep passing it back and forth until we actually think that the scene is firing on all cylinders. And so that process has been really, really good. What else has just been interesting this whole time has been that old adage of you write the movie 3 times. It's so true. It's so true. And you need to write the script a certain way in order for the script to sell.
Yeah.
To raise money, to attract talent, attract crew. When you're on set, you end up shaping a bunch of those things. And you realize, because of whether it's a production issue or a creative idea from an actor, or you get inspired on the day, you start to change things around and you go, oh, actually, this scene isn't necessary. I think we can combine these scenes. And what if we do this? And generally, you do a gut check, but it's probably a pretty good idea. And then that's what you end up shooting. And that's what you're left with in post-production. And ultimately, when you get to post-production, nothing else that you've done matters, because all you have is the footage. You can't really do anything else. So looking at the footage, then you go, oh, well, the script's intention for this scene was X. On set, we ended up going in the direction of Y. But in post, you're like, we're actually left with like Z. And you're looking, okay, well, what is Z? Let's explore that a little bit more. And like, is there another way to do this? And all of a sudden, the world opens up. And even in terms of this movie, we have cut a whole bunch of scenes from the first act, from the second act, that we thought script-wise were very, very important. They were for for the script to understand the script and the story. But the movie is the movie, and the movie also tells you what it wants to be. And very quickly we realized, like, well, wait, we need to. This thing is dragging right off the top because of these just like what scenes that we thought were maybe really important for the script. And we're like, well, what if we cut those? Oh, holy cow, look what it does for the character here. All of a sudden, you're looking at this person in a different way. And okay, well, what's the ripple effect of that? And we're tracking that. And so we're cutting scenes, we're rearranging scenes, reordering things, um, cutting out parts of a scene to change the intention of a scene. It's really interesting. I love the process. And I know every filmmaker out there listening is probably saying, like, yeah, that's why I love post. But it's true. It's just being able to shape the story this way. It's really just inspiring too, and it really gets you thinking. And then that's where you get to test things out. Is this working? Is this not working? Pacing wise, how are things coming together? That's another big one, is pacing, because I've never made a feature before, right? I've only ever made shorts. So my longest short was the Dukabor, which was 16 minutes. And I don't know how many scenes there are in that movie. Not many,
No.
right? Maybe 13 to 15 scenes. And now you're dealing with a 95-minute movie. So as far as like the pacing of the reels and the roller coaster ride that you want it to be, that's been something something that we have to track.
Well, your analogy at the beginning was very apt, of this idea of, you buy the clay and then you mold the clay into the sculpture, and then you take the
Yeah.
sculpture and you have to fine tune it, but the clay itself is the material that you needed in the first place. And the script, all it is a reading document, right? Like, it's a thing you're reading, so it has to read well. It doesn't always survive the test of the editing necessarily, because the editing is the footage. It's like you were saying, it's the visuals. It's, the script doesn't give you the visual imagery that you're capturing on the day. It doesn't give you the performance on the day either. Like, the line that you write in a script is you acting. It's like you're performing that line in your head when you're reading as we all do when we read novels.
Yeah, an actor is going to bring something to the table that maybe you didn't expect.
And they should. Otherwise, you would be the actor, right?
Well, exactly. No. So the script is the foundation. And again, if you have a bad script, you will have a bad movie.
Mhm.
I don't think it's possible to make a good movie from a bad script. So you have to spend as much time as possible to make sure that that script is amazing.
Yeah.
And as good as it can be. But that's going to be your baseline. On set, hopefully, you haven't ruined it in some way, visually, sonically, performance wise, however you plan to make this movie. At the end of the day, though, if you just took a brilliant script and did like black box theater, the story's still probably going to be pretty good because it's a good script and a good story, right? So it can only get so bad. It's still not going to be unwatchable. I don't think so. But you do still technically want to make the best movie you can. But at the end of the day, what you're left with is just the clay on the wheel. And that clay is the footage, your raw dailies.
Yep.
And again, you could do anything with that footage. And honestly, that's what we've had to do in the third act finale. I realized that some things just weren't working as well as I wanted them to be. And the reason for that, I go back to this all the time, or have been, at least in the last couple of weeks, is James Gunn said something like, you need to schedule the production of your third act to be just as long as the first two acts combined. And so if you spend 2 weeks shooting the first 2/3 of your movie, you should spend 2 weeks shooting the last third of your movie. And holy shit, he's right. And I mean, he's made enough movies to be right about those things. But we had one day to shoot our finale. And we had 2 cameras. And even still going into that day, I think I mentioned this on the podcast, like, it was an impossible day. I woke up that morning thinking, how the hell am I going to do this? This is crazy. We have way too much stuff. And this is, again, the thing about having an 18-day shoot versus the 22 that I originally wanted. But look, that's a story as old as time. There's never enough time. There's never enough money. So deal with it. But moving forward, I'm like, no, we really do have to spend more time shooting the finale. And it's not that we didn't get everything that I wanted. I felt that we didn't get enough of it. And so I didn't really have enough flexibility, which meant basically what I've been working on for the last couple of weeks has been rebuilding that sequence with the footage that we have and really thinking outside the box. Like, okay, if this particular beat isn't landing the way I want it to, what footage do I have? What audio recordings do I have? What can we do maybe with visual effects if we have to help tell that story as effectively as possible? And our editors, myself, Chris, we had a couple meetings about it, and we just started to look at the footage and just see what we can put in there. And honestly, this is why, like, even when you yell cut, your camera operator should not immediately cut the camera. Wait 4 or 5 seconds, because there are shots in this movie that are really important to tell the story that happened after I said cut. And the camera just happened to be rolling a little bit longer. And there was a look, there was a light change, there was an expression where I'm like, that's the thing. That tells the story perfectly. Put that in the movie. And it's there. And it totally works. And so the finale has, like, it's great. It totally works now. And it's effective. It's emotionally satisfying. Everybody has commented on how it works now. And but that was just us trying to figure out what to do, because it just wasn't really there in the script or on the day, if that makes sense.
Oh, for sure. The medium is different at each level. And that's where, when we're getting into editing, it's almost like editing isn't even the movie making part of it. Like, there's the production side, which is one medium of making the film. And then the editing side is a whole other, like, the movie only gets better in the edit. And that's the wonderful thing about it, is
Yeah,
it's always got a chance to get a little bit better with a new decision, a new angle, or a new take on how that scene is working to make it a little bit stronger. And like I think what you said with the writing of the script is, like, the writing of the script is necessary, because you can't get to that editing moment without having written
that's right.
even the stuff that never ends up being shown in the film. Had that not been there, you wouldn't have gotten to this point, right? Like that extra half page of writing.
Well, here's an example of that, though, and this is true for, I know, the movie Arrival, written by Eric Heisserer, directed by Denis Villeneuve. Like, there's a scene in that movie where I believe Amy Adams and her daughter are looking at horses, and she has a drawing, I think, of, they're looking at horses, and she said something, oh, they're just like us. In the script, that line was there, but in the movie, they cut that line out. And the reason why they didn't cut out the line in the script was Denis was like, I need her to say the line on the day, in person, in the scene, so that I get the reaction that I need because of that line. But the line will never make it into the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so true with a scene in Remnant, is that there are a few scenes with, like, lines as buttons of scenes, sort of like just a nice little, like, exclamation point at the end of a scene. But generally speaking, I knew that I would cut that out of the movie, but I needed them to say that line so that I can get the right reaction for them for
Mm-hmm.
the edit. And that's the thing. Like, scripts aren't meant to be read. Scripts are meant to be produced. And the script is not the movie.
Mm-hmm.
The movie is the movie. So the script is such an important element of it. Production is such an important element, obviously. Screw AI.
Yeah.
and in post-production, that's where it's all coming together. All of that to say, too, like, where I'm at right now in the process, I'm only at like 50%, because I still have original music to layer into this thing,
Yep.
original sound design, color correction, and 100, as of yesterday, 172 visual effect shots.
Right.
So none of those things are in the movie right now, and it's playing pretty well.
Yeah.
And so once those things go in and this thing comes out polished, like, I'm very excited about what we have on our hands.
Yep. That's fantastic. And I mean, again, just to, wrap that up, it's like, well, this, you had to do the same thing with the script. The script had to get to that excellent point. And once it got to that excellent point, then you could get the money. And now that you had the money and you could get the cast, and then you get the cast. Now you're looking on set for performances and execution and all the executing on the plan. And suddenly you go, okay, this is the best it can be now because the plan has been executed as best as we could get it to. And now the plan was executed excellently.
That's right.
And then we get to the edit. And now it's like, okay, now let's take all of that. And now the edit has to be excellent. And it's like, what this time that you're spending along the way, having the editors that you have. I mean, all of this has required human beings to get to each and every one of those levels. Like we can, AI can do a lot of this mechanically, but it doesn't understand what excellence is. It knows what's good, can get you to good, but it can never.
No, but it gets you the average of everything that's ever been made before.
Exactly.
But look, like there's this weird thing about AI where for some, okay, well, I know why. It's for financial reasons and investment reasons that everybody's like, this is an AI thing. And it's like, no, it's still just like a bunch of guys in a basement putting this thing together. But the point is, there are AI tools in the editing software and sound design software that we all use, and the tools are incredible. Voice isolation. You talked about with a click of a button, you can do things. In DaVinci Resolve, with a click of a button, I can mask myself out and remove the background. And normally that would have taken me a couple hours of masking individual, and it wouldn't have been as good. But now an AI, quote unquote, AI tool can do that. And that shit is brilliant. Okay. And that's not taking any jobs away. All right. There are AI tools that help with visual effects and AI tools that help with sound design. And all of that I am so for. When we say AI and screw AI, I mean the actual like production process of like generating video that doesn't look good and can't really be manipulated. Because the second that you say that you give it a note, oh, change this thing,
has to regenerate the whole thing. Yep.
It doesn't work the way visual effects works. It doesn't just tweak things in an element. It takes it all apart and then puts it all back together, hoping that you get 90% of what you had there before. And it just doesn't work that way. And so I'm all for AI tools. Bring it on. I love them. All right. They help the process. But as far as generative AI, oh man. And we're starting to see the decline. Right?
Yep.
I mean, Sora 2 just shut down.
I know. And that's the thing. We were all worried. And I mean, I'm not saying there's not reason to be worried. I think there's some things that some industry aspects are going to be affected by it. I mean, this is a whole episode, I think, of this concept. But like the tools were there in AI, so to speak, to make Remnant.
Yeah.
Like Remnant could have been made with AI, given the tools that we have right now out there. And you could have had a film that would be a movie. But because of the fact that it is so easy, it makes it redundant. It isn't necessarily even what we call the human touch that's making Remnant good, because you feel the organicness of it all and everything like that. It's the fact that the emotional connection that the movie will make with an audience can only be achieved. And I think that this is very true. It can only be achieved with human touch on those elements. Like even if human is directing the elements, and you're, like you said, in order to, AI remove Ken from frame, fine, that's easy. But human has to determine what's the frame.
Yeah, but I'm still making the movie. The difference is like if it's an AI movie, why would I spend any time to watch something if you haven't spent any time making it? And so that's why, like, to me, AI, this whole risk of AI taking over, no, I think it's all bullshit. I think like no one actually likes it. It doesn't look good. No one's going to sit for 2 hours in a movie theater and watch an AI movie. There will be people, for sure. I shouldn't say no one, but AI is going to, in my opinion, it's just a genre of film. It's no different. Like, micro dramas or whatever they're called, the verticals are taking over the business. No, they're not. They're taking over people who want to watch things on their phone. Like and both things can be true. Like the box office is not dying right now either.
It's just different.
So movies are doing well, verticals are doing well, and AI is probably just going to be a genre of film of like, this is an AI movie. It's an AI horror. It's a subgenre. Okay, cool. You can go watch that and have fun, but it's not going to be taking away any studio jobs. There are other bigger factors at play that are ruining Hollywood right now and disrupting the industry. But I don't think we're in danger right now of AI replacing film crews. it's just it's not cost effective on top of that.
What drives someone to go to a movie theater? Like I saw Project Hail Mary or the other day, and I was like, what drove me to go see that was I'd heard good things about it, of course, and it was based on a book that I hadn't read that book, but I read The Martian, and I was like, well, I like the author, so I'm gonna go watch this film. And I left that theater going like, I enjoyed the film. Some people have and haven't, but I mean, I left it and I was like,
I loved it. I thought it was amazing.
I really enjoyed it. I left the theater. I thought that was a movie I wanted to see in a movie theater, and it delivered on going to a movie theater to see a movie. And I thought to myself, they're still making movies like this, like with all the technology and all the money concerns and all this other stuff. I'm still going and watching a very good movie in a theater that is, I don't have to even like qualify that. It's just a good movie.
Yeah.
It's a well-made movie. It's got it's it's hitting all the right buttons for me. Great, good. And I know there are lots of them out there, and theaters are doing, fine. Marky Plier, who made Iron Lung, he went and made a movie, and it did really well in theaters. It made, whatever it made $40 million in its first couple of weeks. I mean, it did really well. People want to go see movies in theaters. I don't think that's going to die, but it's also because they want to go see movies in theaters that have people they want to go see, that have stories they want to see. And all of that is still very much a human input.
Absolutely. Yeah. But but new original stories, human stories, but I think more genre leaning than before. I think that dramas are staying at home, and I think that theaters are more for genre films now, which I'm fine with. I'm a genre filmmaker, but like it's going to be sci-fi, thriller, horror, maybe romantic comedy. Hopefully those come back, but it is going to be more genre films, in my opinion, for movie theaters, and that's
but it
fine.
always has been, I think, a little bit, because the only dramas that have really done well are the ones that are the Oscar bait.
Yeah,
and so that's a very high echelon of like maybe 15 films every couple of years that are strictly character piece dramas that aren't in quote unquote genre world. But you need such a high level of acting talent, and people are going to see those actors or see actors that are up and coming who have gotten a lot of buzz because of their performances in those films. But yeah, like I think for the most part, lots of dramas have never made it in movie theaters. I mean, Shawshank Redemption didn't make it in a movie theater. It never did well in the movie. It did well in digital.
Well, a lot of those movies, actually, that's a good point. A lot of them did so well on video rentals, right? And home releases that's how they made so much of their money back. And then amazing films and Oscar winning and et cetera, et cetera. But there just isn't that secondary market now for films. And so if you can't make it to the theaters as a drama, yeah, I mean, I guess trying to get a streaming deal is really the only way. But then, God, that's a whole other thing. It just gets lost in the shuffle.
Well, Ken, anyway. I think we have to do this more often. We've got your test screening coming up, but obviously you're getting into more post-production stuff over the next 3 to 4 weeks, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I'll be able to announce a few more exciting developments with the film in the coming weeks. So let's be sure to do this again, specifically for Remnant, very soon. So I have some cool things in the works.
Amazing. Well, it's been fantastic catching up. I hope everybody out there is as excited as I am to see the movie and to hear more about what's happening in post. And then, of course, we'll get into distribution in your festivals and all the other things that you're going to be going for.
Sounds great. All right, let's get into it. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Ken.
All right. Okay, so that's it for this week's episode of Off the Lot. We want to hear from you. If there are any topics you want covered or any questions you'd like answered, please email us at podcast.offthelot@gmail.com.
You can also find us on Instagram and YouTube. Our handles are in the show notes. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe. And share this with your friends. See you next week.